Nitin Paranjpe is the quintessential HUL man. He joined the company in 1987, has led it in an executive position for a significant period, and through challenging times for the Indian economy, has moved on to major roles in Unilever globally and is now chairman of Hindustan Unilever. In his first television interview since taking on this post, I'm speaking today exclusively with Mr. Paranjpe right after his first AGM address as chairman. Mr. Paranjpe, thank you for giving your time to ET Now. The title of your speech at the AGM is Serving India Today and Tomorrow. How does that tie in with the broader theme of what Hindustan Unilever stands for and the challenging times that the Indian economy and the global economy are facing right now?
It's a great question, and I'm going to contextualize this. I said I've been around for a long time, and while a lot has changed, some things have not changed. I remember when I joined this company, many senior leaders who would speak about this used to use a phrase, and they said, if it's good for India, it would be good for HLL, as it was then called. And I think that idea that what's good for the country is good for us as a business was true then, and is true even today. And in many ways, the success of this organization over this period of time has been because of this deep belief that our fortunes and the fortunes of the country and the nation and the society in which we operate are inextricably linked.
Of course, you now have a very significant global role as well in Unilever. Some of those challenges, and many of them I would say, are common throughout the world to global economies. We have an ongoing conflict in Russia and Ukraine, which has pushed up crude prices. You have economies still recovering from 2 years of COVID-19. The price of every commodity is up through the roof. What has been the impact of that? And do you see the impact continuing in a global and Indian context?
So you said it very well. These are extraordinary times. And despite my being around for so long, I don't think I've seen a period where so many factors have come together to create the conditions that we find ourselves in. The levels of inflation that we are dealing with are unprecedented. And in fact, we tend to use this term so often it loses its meaning, but they truly are. And I don't know how things will evolve. The world is simply too uncertain, too volatile for me to predict how long this will last. But at this moment, all of us are dealing with levels of inflation which very few of us have seen before. And that's the reality, and it's true in India, it's true across the world.
So in nations like India, which have very price-sensitive consumers, the go-to method, and of course you know this very well, is you go in for smaller packaging, you try and bump up prices bit by bit. Is that a trend that is sustainable? I also want to add on to it, do you see any recent relief from palm oil prices coming down a tad, crude oil prices coming down a tad? Are you seeing any directional change?
So two questions in what you said. First, I would say I wish I could say at this moment that we are seeing crude oil or palm oil or any of those, the changes that are taking place which are likely to be significant for us to heave a sigh of relief. I'm still cautious. Yes, they've stopped moving up. Yes, they've altered a bit, but nowhere close to a stage where we can say that the issues relating to inflation and commodity prices are behind us. So for the immediate future, I think we have to deal with this. Now, how do you deal with this? I think, first, I think we have to acknowledge that this puts an incredible pressure on the ordinary person on the street, and it does impact people. And saying cost of living issues are not just true in a place like India. I live in the UK, and it's probably the single biggest topic which is being discussed as to how do people manage. And when I see that people in developed countries are struggling to manage their household budget, I can begin to see the sort of effect that would be there in countries like India, which we are here. So what can we do? So our response as a company in situations like this, as indeed most others, is to first try and see how we can be very, very tough on cost, remove waste, remove inefficiencies, try and mitigate the burden that people will feel by driving efficiencies within the organization. And that's in our interest, and that's in our consumers' interest to do. So we begin with that, but the levels of what we are dealing with, price increases are absolutely inevitable. So we try and manage that as sensibly as we can, sometimes as prudently, sometimes through a combination of small increases which makes it reasonable, sometimes through reduction in fill levels to protect some price points which consumers find easy to buy at. So it's a combination of measures. There is no easy answer. I think we don't like it, but there is simply no alternative at this moment as all of us deal with these levels of increases.
Isn't it eventually going to hit a wall when it comes to impact on demand? That is already being seen, and if I see the latest numbers, the turnover top line is all, of course, fantastic, but margin pressure is already visible.
For sure. So these are difficult times, and I'll come back to what you said about the compression in demand and things of that sort that we will see. And we will have to deal with that. The way we think about it as a company is two things. A, we have to do what's required in the short term, but never lose sight of our longer term purpose, why we are here, what we want to do. The longer term perspective that we have in the country, our point of view as to what it will take for us to succeed remains unchanged. We remain optimistic. We have a high belief in the business model, the quality of our people, this competitive advantage that we are building, the difference that our brands can make, and therefore we look forward and look ahead to India, to a company in this country with a great degree of confidence and optimism. As far as the short term is concerned, yes, these pressures do have an impact of compressing demand for all the reasons that we understand. And we are seeing some of that for the first time. For the first time in many, many years, we are seeing volume growth rates disappear in some categories, actually becoming negative for a few months. It is understandable, and it's really for all of us to navigate through these difficult times. But just like good times don't last forever, neither do bad times.
You know, an important target for 2030, there's another one for 2039 of going zero emissions. What are the big steps that will be taken to reach there? Because there's a host of things the company has announced. You've said you're plastic neutral, for example. How much, I mean, my essential question is, are you ready to put your money where your mouth is? Are you ready to really push the envelope to reach these goals? And is it now a primary objective?
Our vision is to demonstrate that it is possible to deliver strong business performance, exceptional outcomes, while being a purposeful and sustainable business, while being a leader in this space. That's what we are here to demonstrate. We have set goals in the area of environment. So you talked about zero emissions by 2039. And if we have to get to something like that, there are many steps that need to happen. Steps that we started working on earlier. I'll give you an example of the progress that we've made. For example, if you take in our production, in our producing of our products, we've already reduced the carbon footprint by 94% over a 2008 baseline on which we started measuring. That gives you a sense of some of the milestones that we need to hit if we have to get to those outcomes. We've already removed, I think, all our thermal energy that we are using is now green energy in all our operations. So we take a goal like this, we break it up into individual components and say what needs to happen this year, what needs to happen there next year for us to have any chance whatsoever to get to that outcome. And in several goals like this, you never set a goal like this knowing every step along the way, because so much will change. There will be new technologies that we can't imagine. Systemic changes will start happening, which we cannot foresee at this moment. But it helps when business creates conditions and puts a stake in the ground, because it gets everyone working towards that, and that creates innovation, new ideas, new thinking, and new solutions emerge. If you take plastic, we've committed a goal which is much a shorter term goal. By 2025, we want 100% of our packaging to be reusable, recyclable or compostable. But we've also said that we want to be plastic neutral, that we must be in a position to take back, process and dispose safely at least as much plastic that we are putting out into the environment today. And I'm delighted to say that this company, Hindustan Unilever, last year in 2021 actually became plastic neutral, collecting along with its partners 116,000 tons of plastic and finding a way to safely dispose it. Yeah? So again, to give you a sense of what does this involve if we have to get there. What does it involve is that with every innovation that we carry out, let me backtrack. We have an approach called better plastic, less plastic, no plastic. So every time we are innovating on our products, we say, can it move to no plastic? Can it move to better plastic? Can it move to less plastic? Less plastic is about using technologies to lightweight it. Can you make it different? Better plastic is about recycled plastic that you start using, etc. So this is a long journey. It's not an easy journey. And the challenge that we have to deal with is not just doing this, but like you said, sometimes when you do this, there are some costs involved. Yes. Because at this point in time, there are occasions when recycled plastic might even be more expensive than virgin plastic. Yeah? And therefore, we have to figure out a way to be able to articulate what we are doing, build it in our brand propositions, so that when you are able to tell a consumer that this is what we are increasing our brand preference. There are more people who might want to buy us because of the compelling story that we have got to tell them about what we are trying to do. It's not always easy. There are times we succeed, there are times we don't. When we don't, we work harder to try and see how we can get it right the
I
next
just want
time
to come to the question of plastic in a little more detail. And this is a broader question. I'm not talking just about your company. There is no clear alternative till now, and any real change in a policy way that is, attempted to enforce always meets a lot of resistance. I'll give you an example of a government directive now that from 1st of July, single-use plastic will be banned. It doesn't impact HUL or Unilever products, but across the board, companies in this space have been pushing back, saying that our only alternative is paper. It's expensive, we have to import it. Give us more time. So when it comes to the practicality, then the speed breakers begin.
What I would really say is, firstly, plastic per se is not a bad ingredient. Plastic is a great ingredient. It has some lovely properties as long as it stays in the economy and doesn't move out into our rivers and oceans, etc. That's the issue that we have to deal with. So therefore, we have to find ways by which we have to create conditions by which it can stay in the economy and get reused and recycled. And I think we have to work hand in hand, and I agree with you that directives like this and regulation like this needs to go hand in hand with work which we need to do in other areas, like strengthening the recycling infrastructure that exists out here, which in its absence creates conditions where you're not able to do this. So I think some of that needs to be true, but hopefully we will get this right along the way. It's a tough journey. There is no one. It's not as if other countries have all cracked it. There are many countries continuing to struggle with this. But what has happened is, I think the realization that everyone has had is not solving it is not an option.
I want to switch gears to another area which I know you're passionate about in the sphere of people management. Now, we started this interview with you talking about how you've spent 35 years in one company. That is perhaps unimaginable for people who enter the workforce today. We live in the era of the Great Resignation. We live in the era where people who enter the workforce are not looking at it as a lifelong career. There's more of a gig economy kind of a mindset. What are the challenges to spot, train and retain talent when the entire outlook to work has changed?
I've often said that it's not easy to find a place where your personal values, your personal belief systems resonate so much with the company. You spend so much time at work that when you do find a place where your values, your beliefs resonate with that of the company, you meet a bunch of people from whom you can learn, you can grow, they can become your personal friends, then it creates conditions where you want to stay. Yes, it is true that there are more opportunities today. People think about work a little differently, and therefore the number of people who are likely to stay in the company as long as I have is going to be much lower than what it is now. But there are a few things which are unchanged, which are human truths about people. Yeah? I think every person goes through life in search of meaning. They search for meaning in their life, the meaning at work, meaning in their relationships. So if there is a business context and a company which can find a way to give you meaning, give your work meaning, where it becomes more than a job that you're doing, you're likely to build stickiness in this organization. The second thing is, I think every person goes through life wanting to be a hero. I don't know of anyone who comes to work in the morning and says, I want to do a mediocre job today. There's nobody. So how do you create conditions where you can allow people the chance of doing something heroic? So these are not easy things to do, but I do feel that if you have to attract the right people, if you have to retain the right people, then you have to put in place a few things, or at least you have to work towards them. You have to work towards giving people a meaning in their life, meaning in their work, where what they are doing is much, much, much more than the task that has been given to them. They feel good about it. And the second is, you have to create conditions where people feel valued. They feel that they have a chance of doing something heroic. And then you have to create a condition where there's a culture where they can take a few bets, they can take a few chances. Because if you want to do something heroic, using a cricketing analogy, if you have to hit the ball out of the park, you often have to leave the crease. If you leave the crease, there's a chance you could get out. So to win big time, to do heroic things, you have to be willing to fail. You have to be willing to experiment with a few things. And therefore you need a culture which allows for some of that. And a culture where you feel included, you feel your boss has your back, you can take some chances. So organizations have to keep trying to do this. In my many years in this company, I've tried doing this, and my strike rate isn't great in managing all three things with my team all the time. It's because it's very, very hard. But I've also observed that when these three conditions come true, magic happens.
So there are also a lot of other factors that come into play as far as employees are concerned. There was a survey recently that 4 out of 10 employees in corporate India are waiting for their increment cycle to move out. One of the big reasons was work-life balance. People want a hybrid work model. They want that time to themselves as well. The social moorings are important, inclusivity and all of that. Do you think that it's imperative now for companies, large or small, to take cognizance of these things?
100% yes. Yeah, 100% yes, that we have to recognize that every generation looks at things in a certain way, values things in a certain way. And I think through the pandemic, when people experienced a certain balance in working from home, etc., I think people are looking for flexibility in ways that they haven't looked at in the past. They're looking for a different balance between their work and their life, their priorities in terms of what matters to them. And companies need to be aware of this and factor it in. The answer to that is yes. The first point which you mentioned is everyone looking for the increment cycle. The data might be true that you quoted, but it is also somewhat sad. It is somewhat sad that if you make a choice that if somebody pays you a few hundred rupees, a few thousand rupees more, you'd leave. It also tells you how little you value what you have out here. That the only reason that you're working is a little more money, which also tells you that the work doesn't mean very much to you. You don't get any fulfillment through what you do. And the assumption that work cannot fulfill is fundamentally flawed. I don't believe in that. Work can be fulfilling. Work can give you meaning. Work can make you feel such that you are unlikely to make a shift for small sums of money. Money matters. I don't want to dismiss it at all. Money matters, but money has to be paid to a level where it doesn't become a dissatisfier where you need to leave, but it is never the driver for what you do and why you do it. So it has to get to a certain threshold. As a company, we've always believed that we have to be paid well enough for that, but we don't want to be the best paymaster in the market. It would be terrible if the only reason people work for us is because we paid more than somebody else. That's a terrible position to be in, because it can be changed by one other person coming and paying a rupee more. Yeah? We want people to work for us because they love working for what we do. They buy into our business philosophy, they buy into our value system, and they feel that they have personal and professional growth by working for us.
You know, as we wrap this interview, I want an overall overview perspective of where you see the Indian economy going, because you have that vantage point. We spoke about common factors impacting economies all over the world right now. High inflation, slowing demand. The US is fearing that it might face a recession. Relatively, what do you think are the opportunities for India right now?
You know, India is a study in paradoxes in many ways, like many large countries. It has its share of challenges like any large country has, but it also has significant opportunities. I want to focus on the opportunities today. And I think the opportunity of having such a large population, close to 1.4 billion people in this country, the opportunity that comes from being a young nation and likely to remain a young nation for a while, the opportunity of a growing middle class, aspiring middle class, is very significant. The opportunity of a country with such rapid adoption of technology and all the benefits that come from that is enormous. So I do feel that there are many ingredients that exist today where if we work together on addressing some of its challenges between which are not inconsiderable at this moment, there is a chance that this next decade could be a decade where India could be amongst the fastest growing economies in the world, continue its growth rates, but ideally do so in a manner which is a little more equitable and a little more sustainable, and a real chance for us to move to get to genuinely a middle income economy, address the scourge of poverty and the inequality that exists in this country, and realize its potential. So that's not out of grasp. I am optimistic, but I'm also conscious of the fact that there is no silver bullet, and there are several things to be addressed.
Would you say that one of our largest challenges is unemployment? We've seen years of jobless growth. We're seeing this play out symptomatically in a lot of protests recently, and a clamor for government jobs, which are seen as permanent and safe. The private sector is often, criticized for not giving enough employment. Is that the biggest challenge we have?
It is a very big challenge that we've got. I've often said that India doesn't just need growth, it needs equitable growth. And if I was to go one step further, it's saying very often growth comes out of productivity gains alone. What India needs is both employment-led growth and productivity-led growth. And it's not enough just to focus on the others. And that's why it is important to put in place policies and measures which is likely to stimulate job creation and employment. There are many things that the government is doing in this space, and I think the consistency of policy in that space and staying with and pushing reforms harder in that area will probably address this, because all the things that I said are opportunities for us, which is a young nation, a large population can actually become issues and significant challenges if it leads to disillusionment amongst the many youth, urban youth who don't get employment. So it is an issue that we have to deal with.
Right. I want to thank you, Mr. Paranjpe, for your time and for answering all of our questions. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much. Pleasure being here.